Over the past 10 years, I've been trying different kinds of budgeting methods. It wasn't until I decided to develop my own cashless budgeting method that I was able to succeed. I paid off over $40,000 in debt and changed my freaking life. Mandy Errett here with the Rich Babe Company. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm proud of you for taking the first steps to investing in yourself and your future. My program will give you the tools to take control of your finances and ultimately your life. Over the past 10 years, I've been trying different kinds of budgeting methods. It wasn't until I decided to develop my own cashless budgeting method that I was able to succeed. I paid off over $40,000 in debt and changed my freaking life. Now I'm on a mission to help other babes take control of their finances and live the rich life that they deserve. Okay, the first step in budgeting is to develop a baseline. And a baseline is going to give us an idea of where we're at. So what I need you to do is go back and track 3 months of your spending. And if you're spending in your checking account, we need to know that. We also need to know, like, if you are spending on your credit card, we need to know that. So you'll want to print out your bank statements for 3 months. When we're looking at your statements, we're going to categorize them into 4 different areas. First, your expenses. Second, your groceries. Third, your fuel. And another thing to keep in mind when you're tracking your fuel is if you're married, track each spouse separately, just so we can get an idea of how much each spouse is spending, because it can change significantly based on the type of vehicle or the amount of miles that you're driving. And the last thing we need to do is track spending. So spending is anything that isn't a bill, isn't fuel, isn't groceries. If you're married, once again, it'd be nice to track them separately just to get some sort of an idea, but if you need to, you can track them all together. That is fine too, as long as we get a number to develop a baseline. And the reason I do this is because if you've ever dieted and you've been at eating, say, 2,500 calories and you drop down to a diet and you're eating 1,200 calories, well, it's really hard to make that as sustainable. But if you were to eat 2,500 calories and we dropped you down to 2,000 calories, it's way more sustainable. So, and yes, maybe eventually you could get down to that 1,200 calories, but it gives you an idea of how to gradually make those changes versus just saying, okay, well, your spending budget is $100. If you've been spending $1,000, that's just not really sustainable. So the first thing you need to do is go back and track those 3 months of expenses and get that baseline. Okay, so you've gone and you've documented all of your expenses. You have an idea. You have a baseline for how much you're spending. The next step is to go through your monthly expenses, anything that must be paid every month, and to document when it is due. If I were you, I would put down the cost also on this, so we know when it is going to process, when it needs to be paid by, and what that total is. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do it on the planner if you are using the digital planner. If you're not, you can also print it out. So the easiest way to do it is to click this little thing here. You can go over to the pen option and you can zoom in and you can simply write it. Let's see, I'm keeping all of my stuff color coded. So you can write Jim, like so, or you can use the text box. And you can type that in. Okay? And you'll want to do that for all of your expenses. And the reason that we do this, it's especially important if you are a bi-monthly budgeter. And bi-monthly means that you get paid twice a month. So each paycheck will pay a different set of bills. So say you were to get paid on the 1st of the month and the 15th. all of the bills from the 1st all the way to the 15th would fall under the first paycheck. And all of your bills from the 15th through the 30th would fall under the second paycheck. So that's why it's important to get this. And it's also just important to know which day of the month your bills process on, or which day of the month they need to be paid on. Let's talk about the different accounts that we'll need, because when we are doing a cashless budgeting system, you're going to need multiple different accounts. As you can see here, the main account, our money management checking account, this is the account where we will manage all of our money for the month. All of our expenses will come out of this account. All of our income will go into this account. This is the main account, and then everything will branch off from there. From there, you'll find your spending account number 1. If you're single, you will only need this one account. If you have a spouse, you'll need 2 different spending accounts. You can see here that in the first account, that person will pay for the groceries, their own fill, and then of course their spending. If you're married and you have a spouse, they will have their own spending account if you choose to do it that way, and they will pay for their fill and then their spending. The cushion account, the very first thing that we try to do when we're talking about taking control of our money is to save $1,000. And what this does is it creates a cushion for us. If something bad is to happen or something unexpected, we can use this money to pay for that. So we're not continuing to go into more debt by putting things on our credit card. So the first thing you want to do is really focus on saving that $1,000. Once you save that $1,000, then we can look at the next things. We can look at investing in saving in different sinking funds that you see here. And the sinking funds are the really fun accounts, vacations, Christmas, maybe that handbag you've been eyeing, whatever that is. We utilize sinking accounts to be able to do all of those fun things. Once we've paid off all of our debt, we have $1,000 in savings, then we're going to work on saving 3 to 6 months of expenses. And I say this is our golden savings account, right? It doesn't matter what the heck happens. We are golden if we have this saved. We can be unemployed or something could happen, and we know that we're going to be okay. We're golden. So once you've saved your $1,000, you've paid off all of your debt, then you start saving for this in this golden savings account. And you'll just have to reference back to your monthly management worksheet to see how much your expenses are. And then of course, multiply that by anywhere from 3 to 6 months, whatever you feel comfortable. Once we finish doing that, we're done saving for our golden account, then it's time to start investing. And investing is where it's going to prepare us for the future. And for this step, I recommend reaching out to a financial advisor. There are a lot of ways that you can invest by yourself. I just recommend meeting with a financial advisor and seeing what they have to offer. Okay, let's get to the nitty-gritty, the budgeting. Actually, I don't prefer to call it budgeting because I feel like when you call it budgeting, so many people have this negative idea in their mind about budgeting. I like to call it the monthly money management worksheet, because ultimately what we're doing is we're managing our money. For easy purposes, I am using whole numbers just so that it's easier for everyone to follow. I'm also showing you an example of a married couple. So there are 2 different incomes. When we start this and when you finish, I want to tell you just to make sure give yourself grace, because I remember the first month that I did it, number one, just being a little bit shocked by all of my numbers. And then another thing is it takes a couple months to get it figured out. It's not like you're going to get it completely right this first time. So just give yourself some grace. Keep in mind that you're just going to have to figure out kind of which numbers work for you, and especially when it comes to the spending portion of this. Okay, let's start out. If you look over here in the income, you can see the salaries. of the two different spouses. So you have salary number 1 and salary number 2. And then you just total them here at the bottom. Then we move on to the fixed expenses. So fixed expenses are anything that we have to pay every month. And you can see I listed them all. We have mortgage, car payment, internet, gym, all the car payments. You see them go down. Okay, we have the budgeted and the actual. So some of these are going to change month per month. Like if you look at your electricity, typically your electricity bill changes month per month. So you can see the budgeted versus the actual. We'll take the total at the bottom and add it up. And then when we have the total, we will subtract the total from the total income that we figured up here, which gives us $39,000 on the budget, or sorry, I wish it was $39,000, $3,900 on the budgeted, and then $3,875 on the actual. Then we'll move up here to variable expenses. These are things that we plan for, that are expenses, but they're things that we can get rid of if we had to. And some of the things that we keep here are, for instance, my family, I go to Sam's Club probably every 2 months and kind of stock up on some of the items that we use more frequently. And so you can see here what I budgeted and then the actual. And you go down here, add them up, and then subtract them from over here from our remaining balance, which gives us $3,700. Okay, next we're going to work on transition over to our spending. Let me go ahead and zoom in. Okay, this is when we refer back to our 3 months of spending that we figured out, and we're going to come up with numbers, okay? So we would take what we spent in a month and find out how much we spend weekly. Because with the spending, what I have found is that it's more beneficial to give myself my spending money weekly versus monthly, because when I gave myself monthly spending, I typically had a difficult time managing it over the course of the month, and it was much easier to manage on a weekly basis. I also like to pay myself on Friday, and the reason that I do that is because we're typically doing things on the weekend, and then also I'm able to grocery shop on the weekend. Okay, so we haven't figured out how much we spend per week for groceries, and I allotted $175. And these are all just fictional they're not definite numbers. I'm just coming up with some numbers to show you. You're going to tweak this to fit you and your needs. One thing I need to point out is it's important to look at your calendar when you're looking at this, because if you see here, there are 5 Fridays in the month of April, which means that I will pay myself spending money and my spouse 5 times in the month of April. Okay? So that's important to look at, because if you don't count the Fridays or whichever day you decide to pay yourself, you could really short yourself a lot of money. And if you look at the difference of the amount of money that you would short yourself, it's pretty significant. So $475 would be short if you didn't look at the amount of weeks within that month. So, okay, when we look at spending, the way that I typically figure out spending is, like I said, you go back and you look at the groceries and what you've determined for your family's needs per week. And then as far as spending, let's say we're going back and we're looking at the fuel, and I spend $50 per week, and my husband spends $100 per week because maybe he's driving more miles or he drives a diesel pickup. And if you're single, you will not need this spending account, okay? You will only need to focus on yours. So the spending account that is optional is for a second spouse. And I like to keep the spending separate, and some couples may prefer to keep them together. But the reason that I like to keep them separate is that I get my spending of money, and I get to spend it however the heck I want to, right? And my husband can do the same. He can spend it however the heck he wants to. And there's no animosity over like, oh, she's getting another Amazon package, or, he's doing this with his money. It just takes that away, and it lets you just spend your money however you want to spend it, which is really nice. So we would go back and we'd look at our 3 months and we determine how much per week we're going to give ourselves for spending. A good place to be is to be able to pay yourself 10%. So if you look at 10%, this is your income for the month here, the $7,500. If we figured that out over 5 weeks times 2 spouses, that would be $75 per week each spouse would get spending money. So you see here that the spouse number 1 gets $125 spending, and that includes fuel and their $75 spending, and spouse number 2 would get $100 for their fuel and then $75 for their spending. So it equals $175. And you can see how I just repeated it through the week. Okay, and another thing is typically the spouse number 1 would do the grocery shopping. And so what I would do is I would group this groceries and spending for spouse number 1. So they would receive all of this. And then the spouse number 2 would receive this. And the cool thing about this is when you use the envelope system, and this is what makes us different from the envelope system, is the envelope system, you allot a certain amount per item per month. So say you have X amount for fuel and X amount for groceries and X amount for vet bills and X amount for medical and X amount for blah, blah, blah. Okay, when I did that, I found myself constantly stealing from one envelope to pay another envelope. And maybe 1 month it would be more in medical bills and 1 month more in this, or however that looked, to whatever my month looked like, but it never looked the same. And what I found is one envelope always had money left over, or like I said, I was constantly borrowing from another envelope, or constantly running to town to deposit my cash so that I could spend online. And so that's what's really great about this, is it's all in your checking account, and so you spend it with your debit card versus having to carry cash. There's nothing against cash, that just personally works better for me. So the other cool thing about this is the account can borrow from each other, okay? So say you have a bunch of family coming in this week and you end up spending $200 on groceries. That's fine. It just means that maybe you're spending less in your spending. This can also be tailored. So say you don't want to spend it out of your spending this month. So then you just up your budget for that week for your family to come visit, or whatever it looks like. So it doesn't have to be the same week per week. You can change it based on what you have going, or maybe you're going out of town this week and you want to give each of you an extra $100. You can do that. It doesn't have to be the same from week for week. You can change it to fit your family and your needs, and whatever works for you. Okay, so you would total it up, and you see here on the bottom it's $2,375. We would subtract that from the $3,700 that we had remaining up here, which gives us $1,325. So over here, we'd move on to sinking funds. Sinking funds are anything that we're saving for that prepare us for events. So say Christmas, you spend $1,000 every Christmas. Instead of taking $1,000 out of your paycheck in December or maybe in November, you can periodically save for that, which then when Christmas comes, it's completely saved for. It's paid for. You're not having to put it on credit cards or pay for it later. It's completely paid in full. You just know I have $1,000. That's what I'm spending. And that's how that works. So sinking funds are when I say all of my vacations are paid for before I take them. This is how I utilize sinking funds. I just save for them. Sometimes I may even just have to save for them in 1 month. or sometimes it's just 2. It's just whatever works for you and your budget. But it just allows for you to still enjoy life and have fun, but you're not going in the debt to do that. You're planning for it and you're saving for it. Say you need new tires on your pickup or your car, same thing. Anything that's a big purchase, you save for through sinking funds. Okay, let's say that you are on our very first step, which is putting $1,000 in savings. Okay, let me back step. We forgot a step. Okay, so we add up here $400 for each, which leaves us with $925. We have 2 options. If you are on our first step and you're saving that $1,000, you would apply it here in to your cushion account. Okay, so you'd be able to apply that $925, and we are a $0 budget, which means there is a place for every dollar. So given that we have the $925 left here, that means we have $925 to either apply towards debt or to apply towards savings, okay? So in our case, we're working on that first $1,000. And so we are going to apply that in our cushion account, which leaves us with $0. Do you see how we have $0 here at the bottom? Okay, that's what we want. Let's say that, Let's say that we have our $1,000 saved and we are applying this towards debt. Okay, I always do everything as far as figuring out my debt or where I'm saving or where I'm applying to my cushion account. I always put it on the last day of the month as far as being able to transfer that money over. That way, just if something was to pop up, I would be able to make some adjustments to my budget. Or if I was supposed to get a tax return or sold something or whatever needed to add it to my income, I can do that there. Okay, so we're going to pretend that we are applying this to our Bank of America instead of putting it in our cushion account because we've already saved for that. So you can see over here where we put it in the place of the debt, the extra debt payment. Okay, so that gives us the $0 balance at the bottom. Same thing. We want it to equal $0 at the end of the worksheet, and that means that every dollar has a place. Okay, if you're just applying to either debt or savings, when you get to this step right here, that's pretty much going to tell you how much you can apply to debt or to savings. As you can see how I carried over the $925 to make it an even $0. I plan at the beginning of the month with the actual or the budgeted, and then anything that is a given, normally all of my spending, all of my fixed expenses, my sinking fund, all of that stuff is normally a given. And then the things that are going to vary a little bit, as far as your electricity bill or over here with your variable expenses, anything like that that's going to change a little bit, I fill in the actual at the end of the month when I'm closing out my budget for the month. So you do it at the first part of the month and then you do it at the end of the month to just put in your actual numbers and make sure everything changes. Because if for some reason, say this was actually more money, that would give us less money here to be able to put in. But for just being able to explain it, I chose numbers that would give us a pretty similar experience and be able to see how that works out at the end. I talked about bi-monthly budgets, and that is when we get paid twice per month, and so we'll want to use a bi-monthly budget, okay? You'll have to reference your calendar for this to be able to see which bills fall under that paycheck. So it's the same concept as the money management worksheet I went over before, except that if you are paid twice per month, you're going to want to do 2 different budgets. One for the first paycheck and then one for the second paycheck. Okay, we can utilize this page when you are tracking your spending, and that's when you have your money in your spending account. You would track it in this page. You really don't need to track your money management account because you're tracking it through your monthly management worksheet. And so if you did everything correctly in that worksheet, ultimately, theoretically, I guess is what I should say, you shouldn't even have to necessarily look at the account because you know there's always enough money in that account to be able to pay your bills for the month.